Good morning. It is 10 o'clock. I will call this Board of Fire Commissioners meeting to order. And Commissioner Clark, can you please lead us in the salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll call?
Yes. Alexis Hill, Chair.
Here.
Jeannie Herman, Vice Chair.
Here.
Michael Clark.
Present.
Mary Louise Garcia.
Here.
Clara Andriola.
Present.
Fire Chief Charles Moore.
Here.
Deputy District Attorney Wade Carner.
Here.
And I'm Chief Deputy Clerk Kathy Smith. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We will now go into item 3. Chief, can you lead us into that item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 3 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Cliff Lowe.
I need the overhead. Isn't it usually over here?
It is.
Do you want us to rearrange there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Adam can do that.
I want to use the overhead. Sorry. And with apologies to the great firefighters who are here. For the record, my name is Cliff Lowe, and I'm going to speak to an item that is clearly not on the agenda today. I would like to speak to the Board of County Commissioners Rules of Procedure Handbook and the way in which early public comment has resulted in being removed from the agenda. I think I don't need to remind any of you that I have appeared before the 5 of you in the past and have denounced the personal attacks, the vitriol, and the general incivility of some public commenters. So it is in that context that I'm speaking to you. I would like to point out that those same rules have what is the ordinary course of business. And it states that there will be public comment as item 4 on the Board of County Commissioners agenda, in addition to the public comment at the end. There are no provisions for removing items from the agenda. Has there not been one ordinary meeting of the county commissioners since April 25th? There was an article in the Reno Gazette-Journal under the byline of Mark Robeson, who I believe is a very competent and reliable reporter, about this topic. And Assistant District Attorney Edwards is quoted as saying Rule 511 of the Rules of Procedure gives the presiding officer, who's the chair, approval authority on the agenda. Well, here's Rule 511. I'll put it down here in a moment. You don't have to be a trained attorney to read this and realize that it is quite a stretch that after the proposed agenda has been approved by the presiding officer, a copy of the agenda supporting material shall be prepared, etc. It's a stretch to say that that gives anyone the right to violate the rules. The district attorney also points out that the presiding officer can rearrange items, but items have not been rearranged, they've been dropped. There have also been, I'm going to run out of time here. There have also been commissioners who have asked to have this item on the commission agenda. There's a provision that says if the chair makes a determination after consultation with legal counsel and the Washoe County manager because it substantially conflicts with the law. I would like to see minutes, and I think minutes or any kind of records of such consultation with the county manager, county clerk, should be made public if the discussion of this cannot be brought up at a meeting like this. And I'm out of time.
No one else is signed in. Madam.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now go into item 4. Chief.
Item 4 is Commissioners' Fire Chief's announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda. No discussion among commissioners will take place on this item.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything for us, Chief Moore?
I do, Madam Chair. We may be block voting items 12 through 17, and since the Pennington Foundation grant may be within that block vote, I wanted to take a moment to express this district's thanks for their very generous grant for the purchase of a wildland engine, and I've authored a letter of thanks signed by the chair, which I'll distribute to the rest of the board, and we'll mail that to the Pennington Foundation today.
Thank you for noting that, Chief Moore. I'm looking now to the other fire board members. Does anyone have an announcement that they'd like to make? Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to comment that it's a pleasure to be in a meeting that the public is allowed to speak at the beginning of the meeting. That way, if anyone has comments they'd like to make, they can make them and then leave and go about their business. But to wait sometimes 6, 7, 8 hours for public to make a comment about something that a very minor issue, but also takes up all of their day, I think it's just inappropriate. So it's nice to be at a meeting where public comment is allowed at the beginning of the meeting. That's the first comment I have. Next, I'd like to have asked the chief if I've got several complaints in District 2 about a property on Esmeralda near west of East Lake, storage of decommissioned government vehicles. Looks like a salvage yard there. I don't know if it's possible to get fire marshal to check that for safety. Excuse me, a number of vehicles, 20, 30 vehicles parked there. I'm presuming there's at least fumes in the fuel tanks and other hydrocarbons leaking there on that property. I'd just like to see if there's any fire hazard there. So if you get an opportunity to do that, I'd appreciate that, and then maybe a report back to me, maybe just personally. I don't know if we have to bring it back to a meeting here, but I'd just like a heads up so I can notify the surrounding neighbors what's taking place there. And lastly, I know you've done a great job working with the folks up at Arrow Creek, but I still have a couple of folks there that have some concerns, so maybe I could check with Mr. Mayberry later and reach out to those folks and see if we can resolve whatever issues that they may have or misconceptions, or just help them clarify what your department is doing. So again, thanks for the great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other fire board members have announcements or requests? Not seeing any. Okay. We will now move to item 5. Chief.
Item 5 is a recommendation to approve the meeting minutes from the September 12th, 2023 Board of Fire Commissioners meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Herman. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Andriola. Do we have any public comment on this, Madam Clerk?
We do not.
Okay, with a motion by Vice Chair Herman and a second by Commissioner Andriola. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And that motion passes unanimously. We will now move to item 6. Chief.
Item 6 is a winter weather outlook presented by Eden Lindeman from the National Weather Service, who's going to tell us whether or not we need to buy more snow blowers.
Right?
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. All right, there it is. Good morning, everyone. I'm Eden Lindeman with the National Weather Service here in Reno, and we're going to go over a quick recap of what has happened this year so far, which has been quite a lot. and then try to look forward to the winter to see what we have in store. So, after another once-in-a-career year, what is going to be next? So 2022 and 23 was the year that kept on giving. So we rang in the new year with records to end 2022. So we had some of our highest precipitation totals on New Year's Eve going into the new year, highest daily snow totals. The rivers were running. We had damage from snow accumulation. A lot of things were going on. And then that just really continued into the spring, where we were seeing lots of low elevation snowfall, rainfall, freezing fog. And then as we went further into the spring, into the summer, it just really kept on coming. This year was really incredible. So some of these shots are just of our thunderstorms. Some of you might remember the flooding that happened in Carson City due to some water running down the mountain. We had some really heavy thunderstorms that day. And we just had a lot of mudslides, water problems, and then, to see the Mammoth Ski Resort with thunderstorms out there and still having snow on the ground, that is quite a shot. So this year has really been quite incredible in terms of the weather and the amount of water that we've been seeing. So just some charts to show just how abnormally wet it has been from last winter through the spring and through the summer. So those really dark green colors are going to indicate record wettest for those areas where it's showing up. So you can see across much of the West, California into Nevada, we were just getting inundated with incredible amounts of water. So that first chart is showing that November through March, so kind of our winter through the spring. And then from March into August, we really stayed quite wet. Lots of green across the west, not as much as into the Pacific Northwest, but you can see we just kept getting that precipitation across the west. So amazingly, obviously, we got so much rain that, there really isn't much in terms of the drought to worry about anymore. So one of our indexes is the Palmer Drought Severity Index, and you can see those really deep blue colors. That indicates that it's very wet. We don't really have concerns for the drought across the west, and there is practically no drought across much of northern California and northern Nevada, which is quite the jump from what we were seeing because we had many areas that were experiencing drought conditions just a year ago. So fire concerns going into the fall, really things have still stayed pretty wet. We've been getting consistent precipitation. It hasn't been incredibly hot. So the fuels across the areas haven't really had a chance to, they've been slow to kind of dry out. So these are just a couple different images that we use. One is the forecast fire danger class. You can see lots of green. That's really good news for going into the fall. And then the map on the left, that just shows our fire weather zones across western Nevada. And you can see for most of those, we're very green. We're not very concerned about the fuels. If the fuels aren't really ready to carry fire, then we aren't as worried about those gusty winds and low humidity values. So just one other comment going into the fall with these fire weather conditions. If we do end up having a really strong wind event, like we're talking about wind gusts 50, 60 miles per hour, we will be keeping an eye on things because even if the fuels aren't incredibly dry, they will still be able to carry fire with those kinds of windy conditions. So we have had fires late into November and into December. So while it's still wet, we are going to be keeping an eye on that. So additionally, the fire concerns going into the fall, these are from Predictive Services, and we work in coordination with them to determine what the fire potential is going to be going in through the rest of the year. So you can see for much of our area, significant wildland fire potential is going to be in that normal kind of category, and then going into November, really the same. So we're not looking at any hypercritical fuel conditions or fire concerns at this time, but we'll still be keeping an eye out for the potential for those big wind events after a dry period. So here we go again. Everybody kind of asked, we keep hearing that El Nino is coming. So let's talk about it. El Nino versus La Nina, here we go again. So this is just kind of showing a generic difference between what El Nino and La Nina means for North America. So you're going to see that extended Pacific jet stream with El Nino on the left. And then for a typical La Nina winter, it's going to be kind of variable. It's going to be more directed towards the north and the Pacific Northwest. We all know the famous Chris Farley from SNL saying, "I am the Nino." Well, what does the El Nino index mean? So the way that we monitor this is by looking at sea surface temperatures in these areas that are indicated in the yellow and red boxes. So you can see the projections from, we've already been kind of in El Nino conditions since about April timeframe. All those orange spots that you see on there where they kind of look like mountains, we are already in very strong El Nino conditions. So El Nino, does that mean a big winter? Not so fast. So if you've been reading some things that are saying that, oh, it's going to be even bigger than last year, that's not really what the science is saying and what the climatology is saying. So these graphs are showing the Southern Oscillation Index, which is another way of recording the El Nino conditions. And the couple of charts we have here, the first one on the left is the California Northeast interbasins, and then the other one on the right is the Nevada Northwestern areas. So the red dots are going to be El Nino, the blue dots are going to be La Nina, and then as they go higher on the chart, that's indicating the October through March precipitation. So these are events that have already happened, and we're trying to look at these and determine what does that mean for Northern California and Northwestern Nevada. Well, you can see that it's kind of all over the place, even with a really strong El Nino. While there are some markers there for higher precipitation values, there's still quite a few that are kind of in that middle range or even lower range areas. And the top ones that you actually see where we've had a significant amount of precipitation are in that neutral zone with the green dots you can see on both of the charts. So El Nino for us it's not a slam dunk when it comes to predicting for winter conditions. So these charts are going to look kind of small, but on the left it's going to be showing U.S. precipitation during the winter during El Nino, and it's every El Nino since 1950. And then on the right, it's showing the U.S. winter temperature during El Nino since 1950. I won't focus too much on the temperature because I feel like people are a little bit more interested in precipitation. So on the left, you can see at the top that we only really have 5 or 6 El Ninos that were indicated as really strong. And there's kind of a mix of precipitation totals there. It's really small, but there isn't really a consistent result from that. And you can see that whether we're in moderate or even weak El Ninos, that it's sort of all over the place, whether we can see that really dark green color where we're seeing well above average precipitation, or if we're seeing those darker brown colors where we're seeing below average precipitation. So again, if somebody's telling you, oh, El Nino, it's going to be crazy, I would take a step back and maybe think about it for a second. So one more that I'm going to look at here, El Nino years have tended to not produce incredibly high river flows. So you can see here, we're looking at, in those red areas, that's, again, we're going to be under like the stronger El Nino conditions. And then on the left-hand side of the chart, the y-axis, that's going to be showing your annual peak flow for the West Fork of the Carson and for the Truckee-Farad peak flows. So again, you can see those years where we really had higher peak flows are more in those weak La Ninas or in those neutral areas, in those shades of blue, the light, and the whites areas. For El Ninos, we're not really seeing significant peak river flows during those El Nino conditions. So again, everybody wants to know about the snow, and I wish I could tell you 100% with 100% confidence that I knew what it was going to do with the snow this year. But these are a couple different studies that they've done. This is the percent average snowfall during a moderate to strong El Nino, and this is sort of showing that we might actually get a little bit above average in terms of the snowfall for Western Nevada and across portions of central and eastern Nevada. Again, this is just one more study that's kind of been done. And then in the Pacific Northwest, it's looking like that under 50%. So this is kind of indicating that it might be a little bit colder in the basin and range. And this is just another correlation showing, the correlation between December through February snow and December through February El Nino. So those periods, those areas that are showing green, it's saying more snow for El Nino, but less snow for La Nina. So again, there's a couple more things saying that we might get a little bit more snow, but it's so far out, it's really hard to determine at this point. So just to look at a few other analog years where we've had a rapid La Nina to El Nino transition, just kind of scan through there. So we have the water year on the left-hand side and some different areas. Again, it's really kind of hard to say at this point whether we're going to be leaning a lot wetter or leaning a lot drier. And our sample size is pretty small. So when we're only looking at 5 years that can really match up with what we're dealing with going into this winter, you're kind of not really setting it up for success. So these are some of our global models that are going to be looking at a little bit further out, and these are produced by the Western Region Climate Center. And again, we like to look at a lot of different computer simulations to see what are they all agreeing. It's kind of like asking a bunch of people in the room the same question. And if they all agree and say the same thing, well, then you kind of lean towards that being the correct answer. There's no guarantee for that, but you'll have a higher chance for success. So again, with these models, there are some that are leaning towards it being a little bit wetter up this way or wetter down in Southern California. There isn't really a solid agreement here. And again, with the National Multi-Model Ensemble, it's not really showing, it's sort of showing like neutral conditions, not really much here across our latitude here at the Sierra and Western Nevada. And I'm going to skip over this one because it's changed in the last week, and we're actually looking at above normal, near to above normal precipitation outlook for the Pacific Northwest. So in the next couple of weeks, things are actually looking relatively warm, and we are going to be looking at a more active period going from mid-October to late October. But in terms of 3 to 4 weeks out, CPC is projecting below normal conditions and above normal precipitation. And then again, like if we're kind of looking, the further and further we look out, it's like kind of trying to guess your fantasy football chances, right? So if you're saying that somebody's going to make it to the Super Bowl, like at the beginning of the season, and the games have just started, we're like week 3 or 4 or something, your likelihood of being able to guess who's going to be at the final Super Bowl is pretty low. So if we're looking at 3 to 4 months out, like our chances here of getting this correct are pretty low, but they still provide these projections and they can be useful. And then, of course, our main course outlook for the winter, a lot of days, it's easy to say that we're going to be above normal in terms of the temperature outlook. But again, that seasonal precipitation outlook, they're kind of leaning towards what a typical La Nina would say. Whether this actually ends up being kind of the final show is yet to be seen. And same as we go into January, February, and March, it's predicting kind of like more typical what we would see for like the springtime, going into late winter, early spring, above normal conditions for the Southwest, and then below normal precipitation. So what does this all mean? Really anything remains on the table at this point. The same logic is going to apply to snowpack and the water supply. We're heading into this winter in a really good spot. We have had a lot of rain, so the ground is still rather saturated. So if we do end up with some bigger storms, we're probably going to be leaning towards more of a flooding situation than we normally would be, unless we get into like a drier time period. And then we, even though we're projecting that, we're not really sure if we're going to have an above normal winter or not, we can still have big snowstorms, floods, cold spells, inside sliders where we end up with a bunch of snow down here and not as much up in the Sierra. And of course, windstorms even in a drier than normal winter. So while we're saying that fires are not a huge concern at this point, if we are looking at a drier than normal stretch, and then we are going to see those very high significant winds like a downslope wind event, then we know that can change, and that we'd be in a time frame where we'd be concerned about critical conditions occurring. So how can you prepare? The best way that you can do this is to remain informed. My favorite thing to look at on any given day, even when I'm not looking, is going to be our forecast discussion. Our forecasters is kind of like a blog style format. You can go in there and kind of write what you think is going to happen. It includes forecaster confidence, kind of a big outlook of what's happening over the next 7 to 10 days. We have briefing email lists. You can follow us on social media, or you can sign up for INWS to get watches and warnings. So again, we unfortunately don't have a app. So if you want to get the weather forecast and have it at your hands, then you have to go to the mobile.weather.gov, and it's actually a pretty decent website for how it's set up. And then we are available for remote versus on-site support operations. And that was all that I had for you today, unless there were any questions. I know it's a lot of information.
Very helpful, and I always love these presentations. Thank you, Ms. Lindeman. Is there any fire board members that have questions or comments? Good outlook, hopefully, and we'll see if we get more precipitation in the next few months here.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chief, we will now move into item 7.
Item 7 is awards and recognition for those employees that we are honoring. I would ask that their families come and join us at the podium, and I will join staff at the podium as well.
Wonderful.
Sorry. Good morning. For the record, August Eisenhagen, Division Chief with Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. Can I have Cameron Moore come down, please? I'll read a narrative for what occurred, but Mr. Moore is being awarded the Golden Axe.
I forgot to tell you 14 as well. I'm sorry.
All right, for story time. On July 26, 2023, TMFPD wildland personnel were clearing vegetation around power poles and fence lines in the Hidden Valley area. Upon arrival to the parking location, Squad Boss Cameron Moore and his personnel noticed an extremely faint glow in the hardware atop a power pole. Mr. Moore made proper notifications to TMFPD Overhead and NV Energy. Subsequent sparking was witnessed while awaiting NV Energy response. NV Energy arrived at roughly 14:30, but the pole was no longer sparking, and initial assessment showed little risk of failure. Squad Boss Moore remained on scene with his equipment and personnel at the request of NV Energy while waiting for NV Energy crews to arrive and assess the equipment up close. During this wait, the pole began arcing again, and due to simultaneous wind gusts and active red flag warning, the NV Energy troubleman on scene deemed it not possible to wait for work crews and began mitigating the issue atop the pole himself. During this time, sparks were landing in dry grass. Cameron Moore quickly mobilized his equipment and personnel for potential fire suppression. Mr. Moore's unit remained on scene to finish fuels mitigation and fire standby well after NV Energy personnel cleared the scene. Weather observations for 1400 on July 26, 2023 at the location of the arcing pole were active red flag warning, temperature 93 degrees, relative humidity 11%, winds out of the southwest 8 to 10, gusting to 15, sky sunny, probability of ignition, which in our language means the chance that an ember will catch, was 100%. With such conditions, a wildland fire resulting from power equipment shortage could have been a substantial issue and difficult to suppress. Cameron Moore is being awarded the Golden Axe, not only for his proactive actions after notifications were made, but even more so for his situational awareness and attention to detail in his surroundings. This awareness recognized a problem that most of us wouldn't have noticed, potentially averting catastrophe.
And if you'll stay close, we'll do a photo after all the awards. Congratulations.
I'm always pleased to recognize when we're able to save a life through the work of our EMS division and high training of our firefighter, paramedics, and our EMTs. Happy to report on a life saved in Spanish Springs. So would firefighter paramedic Dan Moriarty and firefighter Sebastian Hickey please come down? Good to see you. So I'll mention Station 46, that is Spanish Springs for everyone's reference. On April 23, 2023, firefighter paramedic Dan Moriarty and firefighter Sebastian Hickey were dispatched to the new Spanish Springs freestanding emergency department for a cardiac arrest. The physician and nursing staff on the scene had a walk-in chest pain patient who suddenly deteriorated into cardiac arrest right in front of them. They called 911 to request our paramedics be dispatched to assist them, as these calls can quickly become overwhelming. Firefighters Moriarty and Hickey arrived on the scene in Medic 46 and began jointly working the cardiac arrest with the ER staff for over 45 minutes. The patient was intubated, defibrillated, given cardiac medications, and had the Lucas device placed during this time. The Lucas device is a machine that actually does chest compressions while staff are free to do other interventions. The patient was able to regain pulses and was transported to Northern Nevada Medical Center for treatment. We were advised by the treating physician that the patient was extubated the next day and suffered no neurological deficits. It means he got up and walked away. We received a letter from the hospital acknowledging the actions taken by the staff at the emergency room, and TMFR undoubtedly, our actions of our staff undoubtedly saved this patient's life. So we're very, very pleased to offer them the life-saving medal. Short guy in the front.
Chief, you got family.
Oh, family, please come on down. I've been in the fire service 43 years, and I've never seen somebody walk away from being in cardiac arrest for 45 minutes. It is, of course, beneficial if you're going to have a cardiac arrest, do it in an emergency room. But nevertheless, this is a very complicated EMS incident, and the care from the emergency room to the main hospital was certainly critical. So we're very, very happy that the conclusion was positive. Next, we have Mr. Scott Wilcox, who is the service officer for VFW Post 10053 in Verdi. Fortunately, we're not able to give these Firefighter of the Year awards due to COVID, but now that we're out of that situation, we want to present Firefighter of the Year for 2 years now, so I will turn it over to Scott Wilcox, who will give the awards.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be here today. And like Chief said, he basically took my speech away. But part of my job as service officer, of course, is to get services to our veterans and their families. The other part of that is community outreach. We give scholarships to our middle and high school students. We recognize teachers. And of course, why I'm here today, recognize our first responders. Chief Moore has been great helping promote his department, and we've got such qualified individuals. And I see a bunch of badges here, and I know we got firefighters getting them today. And I want them to realize that these awards are what you can obtain with hard work and education. So I want you all to congratulate you first, but I want the recipients that are going to get these awards today, and these are national awards from the National VFW Post, and I've been blessed to have 4 or 5 of these, which makes our little corner of Nevada stand out amongst the national office. The first recipient, I'm going to read a little excerpt that I got here, has been a firefighter paramedic with the Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue since 2014. He currently serves as a firefighter precipitator for training new paramedics, and as a member of the District Safety Committee, he is also Nevada Director of the National Firefighter Cancer Support Network. In his commitment to decreasing the exposure of firefighters to carcinogens, firefighter Dorr has instituted several policies and procedures for decontamination at the scene and in the station, and has raised awareness on the proper cleaning of personal protective equipment to remove the contaminants. Recently, Alex has been able to bring skin cancer screenings to Northern Nevada through his work with the Cancer Support Network. And for our 2020-21 recipient for National Firefighter Paramedic of the Year, Mr. Alec Dewar. Now, with different people in charge, you have different procedures, of course. Some don't want to go with the standard flow. So the awards that we get for the next recipient got a little more involved, but the outcome is the same. You're still Firefighter of the Year, VFW for the nation. So I want to thank you for that. Our next recipient, Captain Brad Noble, joined Truckee Meadows Fire in 2012 and is former member of the Nevada Air National Guard. Thank you for your service. A former PE health teacher before making a career change. Captain Noble is an exemplary first responder. He spearheaded an implementation of First Due, a critical program linked to our CAD that provides alerts of incidents, GIS mapping, and access to pre-plans from our district phones, improving efficiency and access to critical information and data. He also implemented and maintained Check It, a vital program that maintains maintenance and other records for our apparatus and fleet. During the Poville fire in 2021, Captain Noble rescued an elderly couple from their home just as the fire started to ignite the house. In a separate off-duty incident, Captain Noble performed CPR on a cardiac arrest victim at the Reno Athletic Club, saving his life. And these are things, as new firefighters, I hope you strive to obtain, because me personally, being a veteran, knowing that we run towards instead of run away, it's important to know that if something happens, I can rely on you to take care of it. So I want to thank Chief Moore, I want to thank his department, and I want to thank the commission for letting me be here. But for Captain Noble, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. This is so amazing. Thank you for being involved. We would like to take a photo with everyone, so we'll just take a quick break and take that photo.
Come on into the well.
How inspirational. Thank you so much all for your service. We will now move to item 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have introductions of new employees under item 8.
Good morning again. August Eisenhagen, Division Chief, Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District for the record. I have one promotion to announce to the board and a group of new hires to introduce. So to begin with, can I get Mr. Hanson down here with your penner, please? This is Justin Hanson. It is my pleasure to announce him and his promotion from the rank of crew member to heavy equipment operator. Mr. Hanson joined the division in the spring. He's a second-generation firefighter and third-generation heavy equipment operator. He began his fire career with the Lee Vining Fire Department in 2016 and has since worked for Keys Fire Department, North Tahoe Fire, and Nevada Division of Forestry. As mentioned, Mr. Hansen joined the TMFPD Wildland Division in the spring and quickly became an asset due to his equipment, experience, and credentials. He's an advanced EMT and is pursuing degrees in both fire science and criminal justice. Mr. Hansen will be pinned by his father, Steve.
Congratulations. And don't run off. We'll want you for a photo later. Okay.
All right, continuing, can I get all of our new hires and your pinners down here, please? It's a large group. I'm going to be long-winded. I apologize. So again, for the record, August Eisenhagen, Division Chief, Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District, Wildland Division. I'll preface this that due to some extenuating circumstances, including illness and fire assignments, we are short a couple names from what we initially planned with the agenda. But with that, when we get into place, we'll start. I'll work from the commissioner's right side as I go down the list.
Great.
First, we have Mr. Gabriel Akamoff. Mr. Akamoff is originally from Redding, California. He joined TMFPD as a crew member this spring, and prior to that had 4 years of service on hand crews and engines with the California Conservation Corps, Firestorm, and most recently, he served with the Lassen Hot Shots. Mr. Akamoff will be pinned by his girlfriend, Landy. And for the sake of time, I'll finish all the introductions and then we'll do one pinning. Next up, we have Mr. Michael Gallo. He was born and raised in San Jose, California, and moved to Reno in 2016 to attend UNR, where he obtained a dual major in psychology and communication studies, and subsequently completed TMCC's Fire Academy and EMT basic programs. Before joining TMFPD this spring, he worked for 1 season on a United States Forest Service engine out of Jacks Valley. Mr. Gallo will be pinned by his girlfriend, Lindsay. Next, we have Colton Huber. Colton Huber was born and raised in Reno, Nevada, and immediately started in wildland fire straight out of high school. He has attended Western Nevada College and TMCC for EMT basic and fire science credentials. Mr. Huber started in 2018 with the Rifle Peak Hand Crew out of North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, and subsequently promoted to squad boss before joining TM last spring. Colton will be pinned by his mother, Erin. Next, we have Jason Hughes. Jason comes from a family of firefighters. His father and brother are both volunteers with Butte County Fire, and his brother was recently promoted to fire captain. Mr. Hughes himself started his career with the California Conservation Corps on a hand crew in 2002 out of Magalia, California. He did 1 season with CDF in 2003. In 2006, he was hired on with the Nevada Division of Forestry running inmate fire crews, where he remained until moving to TMFPD earlier this year. Jason was recently married this summer to his wife, Chantel, and they have 6 children between the 2 of them. Mr. Hughes' mother, Karen, will be pinning him. Next is Andrew Schmid. Mr. Schmid is originally from Carson City, Nevada. After graduating high school, he pursued secondary education in Santa Barbara before joining the Wildland Arena. Previously, he has had 3 seasons with the United States Forest Service on hand crews and with Carson City Fire Department on engines. Mr. Schmid will be pinned by his daughter, Olive. Next is Colin Stone. Colin is originally from Susanville, California. He entered the wildland fire world 3 days after graduating high school. He then spent 7 years working with the Lassen Hot Shots on hand crews and engines. He likes to say he spent his so-called college years running chainsaw and enjoying being out in the elements. He obtained some fire-centered secondary education through Lassen Community College, but is focused on fire and loves being out with his comrades. Colin will be pinned by his girlfriend, Taylor. And then last on the list, Mr. Dylan Todd. Dylan is originally from Southern California and graduated high school from Bishop, also California, before attending and graduating from UNR with a degree in civil engineering in 2021. He spent 2.5 years as a volunteer firefighter with East Fork Fire Protection District and subsequently was hired by the United States Forest Service. He spent 3 years with the Forest Service and had promoted to the position of assistant fire engine operator before being picked up by TM this spring. Mr. Todd will be pinned by his father, Richard. That concludes our new hire introductions. Again, it is my pleasure to introduce the newest members of the TM family.
Congratulations. Welcome. Okay, we're going to come down, take a quick break, and meet everyone and take a photo. Welcome to the team and congratulations on the promotion. We will now move to item 9, Chief.
Item 9 is the International Association of Firefighters Local 2487 report, and Vice President Jamie Rivera is here.
Welcome.
Good morning. Jamie Rivera, Vice President, Local 2487. Just got a quick little blurb for you guys. Just want to start by thanking Chief Kettering, who's not here, and the district for letting us show our support in October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. These shirts that I'm wearing right here.
Awesome. Nice.
Thank you. It's a medium if you guys want to know the size. So these shirts that we're wearing this month, our duty shirts, were made last year in support for our now retired Battalion Chief Carol Green. She was diagnosed with breast cancer last year. 100% of the proceeds went to her in support of her sister, or assisted her in treatment and other needs. I do like to mention that the local 2487 played a key role in helping her through her workman comp process and approval. That set the stage for all our female firefighters for years to come. So I also wanted to give a special thanks to Leslie Bell, who's a workman comp representative, on all her hard work. I am proud to report our sister from North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District is in remission and on her way to a successful recovery. All in all, I also the local wants to thank and congratulations to all being recognized here today in our awards. Other than that, if you guys don't have any questions, that's all I have.
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
That's great news. Okay, we will now move into item 10, Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 10 is the Fire Chief's report. The Chair requested a census of department staff members, and what I prepared is probably a lot more than you requested. But suffice it to say that our census ebbs and flows over time, but I think the trend since 2012 was more than 2 times what we started with in 2012. So with respect to the EMS coordinator, our plan is once we get the GEMT funding, we'll have that amount of money that we can reimburse her salary and then assign that to a new firefighter paramedic, which we would expect to bring on sometime this spring.
Great news. Thank you, Chief, for that.
Moving on to fuels reduction update. It's green waste time, so October 7th and 8th. We'll start that in Washoe Valley and in Wadsworth on the 8th, followed by Lemon Valley and Silver Lake. And so the whole schedule that you'll find on our website. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like about 9 or 10 events during the course of October and November, including our curbside chipping, which the response isn't overwhelming, but we're still taking applications, and we hope to be able to assist senior citizens who can't otherwise harvest their green waste at one of our events. Will come by their home and chip it. Capital projects update. November 2nd, the entitlements for the Apple Station will be going before the Board of Adjustments for the SUP approval. Once that is done, then we expect to move on to design development for Washoe Valley and for the Apple Station, which again, forgive me for repeating this, but they're the identical stations, and so the efficiency and the architecture is very high in this particular design. What we have been doing since the schematic design was completed at the beginning of June, we're working on the utilities design for Apple because that site has no electricity, no water, no sewer. So we're planning on having to bring in the electricity from likely on the other side of I-80. And how we're going to do that is a little bit complicated, but nevertheless, that's what's been taking up a lot of our time in the last couple of weeks. So again, we're still moving forward and taking steps towards getting these projects shovel-ready. I will say that still have a little bit of angst with respect to financing the stations, given the fact that our C-tax is being challenged. But all we can do is what we can do and move forward, get the stations ready to build, and then make a decision based on what our revenue stream, what our financing options are, and the cost of buying that money to build the stations is, and make a good decision, hopefully at the start of the next fiscal year. So that's all I have to report on that.
Chief, on the Apple Station, the staffing is obviously going to be funded by TM, correct?
That's correct.
I'm wondering if there may be an opportunity, depending on where we're looking at for calls, to work with Story County on a potential grant. Their abatements are going to be coming up, some of their abatements, and so they will have some more property tax. And they have talked about being a partner with us and have been very open to that. So maybe there's potential partnership that we can work with them on. So let's start some of those conversations.
Great.
Any board member comments or questions on that part? I think you have more, right, Chief? Or is that your report?
That's the end of my report. And then just as the next item is Chief Derek Reed to report on his deployment to Maui.
Oh, great, yes.
Good morning. Derek Reed, Battalion Chief with Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. At your request, I was asked to come give a brief synopsis of my peer support deployment in Maui, Hawaii. My purpose in Maui was to visit and check in on the mental wellness of our brothers and sisters in the Maui Fire Department. As many of us know, Lahaina fire was recognized as the deadliest fire now in U.S. history. To date, there are over 100 deaths and still many missing. In my deployment, I was joined by peer support trained personnel from New York, Utah, Arizona, Oregon, and Honolulu. Over the 4-day period, we visited 8 fire stations, making contact with approximately 168 firefighters. We toured their stations, we sat at their coffee tables, and had candid conversations of their experience on August 8th that devastated their community. We also learned much about their Hawaiian culture, their values, and how this affected and will continue to affect their community indefinitely. The fire devastated some of Lahaina Town's oldest historic and spiritual sites. It ran through a multi-generational neighborhoods where the native residents had no time to escape from a wind-driven fire. I was saddened for their loss, but I was grateful and honored to be welcomed into their firehouses to provide emotional support. Their native culture, which makes up a large part of their personnel, they're very proud of their culture and accustomed to doing business with little help on large and catastrophic incidents. They're similar to Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District in the respect their number of personnel, their number of stations, and how they're spread out geographically. What makes them different is that they're literally on an island, which means there's virtually no mutual aid to call upon when they have these kind of incidents. Maui had several brush fires that day in various areas of the island. This made their jobs even more challenging with less on-duty staff and suppression and rescue and suppression operations. And then to make matters worse, they had no contact with loved ones that were in the direct path of the fire. 19 firefighters with Maui Fire Department either lost their homes or their immediate relatives lost their homes. And like I said before, these are multi-generational residences. 19 firefighters lost their homes. Based on the stories that I've heard from the boots on the ground, it was a miracle that no firefighters lost their lives that day. Those that I deployed with from the mainland still send out our thoughts and prayers to the firefighters. We may remain in contact by phone call, text messages, and they're a very resilient culture, and we still stand by them today. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Battalion Chief Reed. We really appreciate you representing TM and your hard work in Hawaii. Any questions by board members or comments? Thank you for that report.
Thank you.
Very appreciated. And did you already cover the response statistics?
I have not. I'll
Okay.
just let that report stand unless there's any particular questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief on the fire chief report? I'm not seeing any. Okay. We will now move on to item 11, Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 11 is presentation, discussion, and possible direction to staff on the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Draft 2024 to 2026 Strategic Plan, which includes the following goals and impacts. Serve the needs of our community. 2, build a safer, more resilient community and workforce. 3, create a sustainable future for Truckee Meadows Fire Protection. We have hired On Strategy to help facilitate this. We've been at this for probably a good 6 months. Now, Erica Olson is here representing On Strategy to give you a little bit of an overview, and then I'll spend some time kind of summarizing the issues that I think that will be important to the board going forward. I know there's a lot there, and I don't want to cover each one of those, but I do want to hit the ones that will have the board's attention in the year of 2024.
Thank you, Chief. Welcome, Ms. Olson. Get closer.
Okay, how about that?
I think it is.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
we're going with it. For the record, Erica Olson with On Strategy. Chief Moore, thank you, and thank you to the board members for taking, let me take just a couple of minutes to tee up the process that the organization went through to develop the 2024 to 2026 strategic plan. As Chief Moore mentioned, I'm representing my colleague Cameron Mock, who was the partner with Chief Moore and the planning team to facilitate and lead this process. I'll take just 2 minutes to let you know how the process went, and then Chief Moore is going to share the plan itself. So in classic best practices, we started the process with gathering all the voices of the stakeholders that have thoughts, opinions, dreams, hopes ideas and expectations of the agency. So that looked like commissioners, that looked like a large community survey, and importantly, and this was a very important design principle for Chief Moore and the planning team, is to make it available for all staff to be able to participate as well in workshops as well as in the planning itself. Again, schedules being what they are, so worked really hard to make sure that everybody that could be and wanted to be part of the process was part of the process. So, and then of course, all of the important external information as well. All that was pulled together in a series of planning workshops, a lot of hard work with the planning team to develop the plan that you see in your packets, all the objectives and the priorities and goals and all that good stuff. Importantly, again, another design principle that Chief Moore asked and the planning team asked was that the plan helped create cross-functional work. So strategic plans can be just plans. They can also be an organizational change tool. They can also be a management practice. And Chief Moore and the planning team were asking for all of the above. So the plan is very purposely cross-functional in nature. It is intended to be a bridge to the sort of a gap year. And I think Chief Moore will talk a little bit more about that as you're revising the standards, the new standards of cover. So again, Chief Moore will talk about that. And then again, as I mentioned, plans are only as good as the implementation thereof. So the document reflects the intention of how Chief Moore and the team intend to use the plan to drive resources, to drive action, and stay focused, quite frankly. And so all of those things tee up the process. And with that, I'll pass it to Chief Moore to talk about the substance. And I have to apologize in advance. I was supposed to be somewhere at 11, so I don't get to stay. I get to watch you on YouTube, so I really apologize because it's a great plan. And thank you so much for the opportunity to work together. And also thanks for the hard work of the planning team and everybody that was part of it, because it was a really great process. So Chief Moore, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson.
Well, the main things that I'm going to ask the board to focus on in the next few months can be summarized in the standards of cover document. Last time we did this was 2011, actually before I got here, before you hired me to be your chief. What the standards of cover document does is analyze our data. We drill down pretty deep and understand where our gaps are and maybe where we're successful in terms of all the services that we provide. So what that's going to help the board understand is where we want to grow as a department, where we need to add additional resources. My gut feeling is that, again, and I've said this in many, many meetings, is we need to strengthen our resources in the north, particularly because 75% of our calls are in the north. Still, the challenge for our department is that we're largely rural land use, and we don't have the benefit of having a great density. And when you compare the city of Sparks and the city of Reno, where they're a typical gridded city and they have a lot of density, the response times are generally short because you've got a concentration of risk. You concentrate your resources every so often within 5 miles, and you can bring a lot of resources to bear on a structure fire when you have that kind of an urban characteristic to what you serve. But not so much with respect to TM, or at least it's different. We do have areas where we have a concentration of risk, but we also have vast areas of just open space in between communities. You look at Cold Springs, and then you get to Stead, and you get up to Silver Knolls and to Lemon Valley. We have some heavy response times to get even a single resource there. And that's nothing bad. That's just what we have to deal with respect to the geography. So for us, arrival of that first resource is the most critical, because lots of structure fires, in fact, most, are brought under control with the first line that's deployed, and we apply water, we bring the fire under control rather quickly. The other thing that's significant is we don't have high rise. We are starting to get some very large, big boxes in Spanish Springs in particular. So we take a look at our resources, we match that against the risk. We do a data analysis, and we explain that in layman's terms, what our gaps are and what we need to do to improve in the next 3 years. That's a lot of number crunching, but nevertheless, I think it's necessary. The other thing that came out of the plan is it's been an issue for us, or a concern for us, for 12 years since we stood up, is annexation. We realize that municipalities need to annex to grow, but the effect of annexation on our district is that it removes tax revenue and it creates this deployment of crazy boundaries of where you can walk across a street and be in another jurisdiction. I have no opposition to cities wanting to annex, but I think what my concern is that it be smart annexation. And as we start to talk about closest unit response, I don't want this district to be expected to serve areas where the cities may potentially annex, and we're in a position to serve that. So what I'm saying is that when cities annex, I would ask that they have a plan to provide the service to the areas that they've annexed. Right now, I think that's missing within our region. And what that drives then is the closest unit response, because we're closer to a lot of areas that have been annexed, but yet we don't have a way to respond to a cardiac arrest 100 feet away from our station, or a structure fire that's 4 doors away from Station 33. What a crazy way to run emergency services in this county. So that has to be fixed. We're taking very, very good steps towards the Common CAD, which will help make some good steps towards resolving that, the communication between dispatch centers, but we still have to have some policy decisions that are made in terms of, is it going to be the closest unit response to every single call, or is it going to be closest unit to the life-threatening ones or the critical ones like fires? I think initially the place you start is certainly with life-threatening emergencies like cardiac arrests and strokes and victims of car accidents that are entangled in the wreckage, and brush fires and structure fires. That's not a big volume. But when you look at, if we were to respond to every call for the city of Sparks and city of Reno where we were closest, and with the expectation of the cities would do the same for us, we need to study that to see what the ratio is. I think the last time I looked at that is we would be far ahead of responding to the cities as the cities would be to respond for us. So that's a critical component of the standards of cover and the analysis of annexation, and what's the best way for us to respond going forward, and driving more regional response and building some bridges between our neighboring fire departments so that we're responding seamlessly. And eventually, as time goes on, maybe that drives a more of a regional department. Maybe it looks like it's one fire department at some point. I mean, that's a very, very complicated issue, but nevertheless, we can take steps towards that. And that's certainly above my pay grade, but I know it's been talked about. And maybe it is a good solution for the region going forward. But nevertheless, the place that we start is looking to where we can be an immediate resource, and the municipalities can be a responding resource for us too. And I think that's a great place to take the initial planning steps towards the future. Financial sustainability, I think we've done a fantastic job on just not relying on property tax and C-tax. Mm-hmm. We have our relationship with NV Energy. We have done very, very well with respect to grants, and all of those non-typical financial resources are certainly, we're doing well, and we need to build more of that. And then finally, in the implementation, one of the things we're going to do is formulate goal teams. So with respect to individual goals, they will meet quarterly. They'll come up with recommendations that will build action items into the budget that we need to plan expenditures of money for. So in a nutshell, I could go on for an hour, and I know you don't want me to do that. But that's kind of it in broad terms of what the plan calls for and what we'll be building on. So I know there's a lot to digest in here. Our plan is to bring this back to you in November and/or December
Great.
for an adoption.
Great. Okay, I'm looking for board member comments or questions. Vice Chair Herman, you're signed in first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you for doing such a thorough job on this. I know that our responsibility as a county for the way that things developed in this county, you're having to suffer the consequences of a lot of that. So our roads too, but our roads help you get there faster too. So it's a very big issue, and I apologize for what we did because it wasn't right, and in not planning some of this a whole lot better. That's what we're supposed to be here for. But thank you for now coming up with this plan, and good luck with it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We'll do everything we can to make it come right. So thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair Herman. Commissioner Andriola, did you have something?
Thank you so much for the plan. I really like the accountability, the financial sustainability piece in there, especially in terms of exploring and continuing to explore non-traditional forms of revenue sources like grant funding and NV Energy relationships to help make up for that projected decline, I think is really forward-thinking. And you have a history of that. I particularly like the recruitment piece. Exploring the implementation of an apprenticeship program is really a great opportunity for the inspectors. I thought that was, really, again, forward-thinking of our community. And really, thank you for conducting a survey and doing the analysis, really getting feedback from stakeholders and understanding residents' concerns as well was, I think, a big factor. So I really want to commend you on putting a strategic plan like this together. And again, having those work group and then the reporting. So I'm hoping that we can also be a part of that reporting, either on a quarterly basis or whatever you deem is appropriate, I think would be really helpful. But thanks again, great job.
Thank you, Commissioner Andriola. I am looking, Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Chief, for your report. I think that, as you said, in 10 or 15 minutes, you covered stuff that we could talk about for months. And there's a lot of material there. In a perfect world, the citizens out there, everything that first responders do is to help citizens, save citizens' lives, save property, make sure people are safe. The citizens and most people don't understand these jurisdictional boundaries. They understand if they might be in the city, but the idea of walking across the street and being in a different area, that's foreign to the citizens. When they need help, they want to talk to somebody. They want some action. They want to know that help is on the way. And to have these boundary issues with other jurisdictions is not serving the public in the best way possible, in my opinion. Excuse me. Take a drink here. I liken this to when somebody annexes an area, it's like an insurance company. You take the premiums, but when it's time to pay, when it's time to pay a claim, they're not available, and so think of it that way. These folks are paying their taxes, which is their premium, and when they have a claim, when they need help, and then it's a jurisdictional issue. That shouldn't be. That should never come to pass. There should be mutual aid. We need to figure out how that can be done with never a question of who responds, how fast they respond, who's going to respond. It should be the closest, whoever can be there and provide help. That's what the citizens are looking for. They don't care about jurisdictional boundaries. We need to make that just more seamless for the public. If we're going to serve the public, how do we get that done? Territorial issues amongst entities and jurisdictions, that needs to take a back seat to public safety, in my opinion. How can we make that happen? That's I think, when you do that for the public, you'll have public that they don't need to understand how it's going to happen. They just need to know it's going to happen. And it could be everything for we talked about today. People were awarded commendations for doing the right thing. Luckily, they were close enough to do the right thing. What if there was a little bit more time to get there? So how do we get that fixed? And that's the issue that I think everybody in this county needs to look at. This county, in the scheme of things, 500,000 people, that's not a big population center, but we've got a lot of geography here, a lot of real estate here, but it's not that many folks in the scheme of other counties. I mean, we're certainly not as crowded as other communities in America, but we need to figure out how we can get the best bang for the buck for the citizens. How do they get service as fast as possible? So anything I can do to help you with that, I'll be happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Moore, thank you. The draft, I think, does a good job capturing both the strategic plan and the implementation plan. Is very clear, very concise. I liked that the document was guided by input from labor, management, community members, and the fire board. And I'm not sure what my other fellow commissioners, what kind of rose to the top for them as they were being interviewed, but mine was largely focused on increasing the diversity of our staff, largely based on a personal experience I had last year, and not to go into too many details, but basically I did a ride-along in Sun Valley last year, and it was REMSA who responded, TM, Sheriff's Office. There was a lot of different folks there who were on the scene, but the only other Spanish speaker was fighting a fire. He was knocking down the fire. And so I jumped in to help translate because it became clear that, minutes and seconds can really matter in these situations. And so started translating outside the fire truck and then jumped into the ambulance with them and helped out REMSA. And ever since that day, I just really, that experience really stood out to me. And I think that given this opportunity, this is a draft and we're looking at the next few years, I think I feel, inspired to kind of bring this up and to emphasize the importance of it, because the document talks about, our regional growth as a challenge that we're facing. But within that regional growth is the increase in diversification of our county. Mm-hmm. And so I know that Washoe County, I just got the numbers from Manager Brown, they're responding to that as well. So without looking at TM or the district courts, we're sitting at currently about 25% of our staff are employees of color. And with the bulk of those who are Hispanic Latino, which varies between 15 to 18%. So this is at the county. And this is closely mirroring what our county as a whole is about, 26% Latino, or 1 in 4. And so this is really important for me, particularly representing District 3, because I'm looking at upwards of 40 to 50% Hispanic Latino. And so those moments where folks cannot ask for the things they need, in that case, it was medicine that was at risk for burning. It was a purse full of cash that could have been their life savings. I mean, these are conversations that take 2 seconds to handle in another language, but if you don't know, you don't know. And that could have had devastating effects on this senior couple. And so my first question is, do we know what the current racial ethnic background for Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District is as of today?
I don't, but we can get that statistic pretty easy.
Okay, because I'm looking at, obviously, I was super happy when I saw goal number 3 listed, the DEIB thing, because again, that was very important for me to see reflected. And I really, really love the 5 initiatives you put in the last column, particularly the apprenticeship program and the Signature Academy. I think those are phenomenal proactive ways to go about recruiting young, diverse, local kids that will live here, stay here, and work here. So I applaud you and your team for having that innovation and thinking about that. But what's to me felt a little bit weaker than the other ones, and it felt weak in the sense like, where do we want to go wasn't as clearly listed in this DEIB section. Because if you look at the other things under, financial sustainability or infrastructure, every other component has specific percentages linked to those. And I got to this section and it just felt a little not specific enough for me. And so I would love to see, for example, in the third column where it says increase in percentage of protected classes within TM, I'd like for us to set the FY26 desired impact goal. I want to know where we want to go and have that explicitly stated in that third column. And in that light, the first column that lists current measurable impacts, it doesn't even say where we're at. And so once you do get that number, I would love to see that percentage integrated into this report, because if we don't know where we're at, we don't know where we're going. It's this particular goal, whether we have a goal team or not, I think is going to be a very challenging thing to address. Yes, we can increase our recruiting channels. Those are easy to indicate. We can, tally up the number of job fairs. But if we're not really moving the needle on this, I don't want to have a goal that just lists the goal just to have it. So that's the only, feedback overall. I thought the entire strategic plan looked very good. And if this is an opportunity to share some insight and a little bit of suggestions, I would love to see those implemented between now and November if possible.
Great. Thank you. And Commissioner, thanks for bringing that up. I would refer you to that page in the monthly report where I firmly believe that a fire department needs to look like its community ethnically. And we're not going to get there by putting out advertisements for people to come apply. We have to grow those employees within our own network. And we start at the high schools and we bring young men and women and those of the ethnic backgrounds that we want to bring into the fire service and start building them so that as soon as they're out of high school and they get into community college, we snag them just as soon as they're out of that. And we've already seen them perform for a couple of years. We know what they're about, and they can move into positions readily without all the rigmarole of trying to recruit nationally.
I agree, and I would even go as far to say that high school is too late. And I suggest we look at Title I elementary schools as a place, as a first touch point. It doesn't have to be as an extensive job fair, for example, but increasing our presence in our Title I schools at a younger age would be another proactive way to go about things. But there was one other point. The other thing Manager Brown mentioned to me is, we've started to offer bilingual pay, and I know City of Reno does a test that measures proficiency in languages, and the county is looking to adopt that specific test. And so I know we're about to enter negotiations next year, but something like bilingual pay could be an incentive that would draw ethnically diverse folks from different backgrounds, particularly Spanish and Tagalog being critical needs in our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. I see that Commissioner Clark signed in again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask the chief if, to Ms. Commissioner Garcia's point, not all Hispanic folks speak Spanish. I grew up in a barrio situation, and a lot of the Chicanos there did not speak Spanish. But also to that point, how many staff members do you have of any and all backgrounds that might speak Spanish? And if we could maybe find out that, see if there's other folks. So this whole conversation started out with Commissioner Garcia acting as an interpreter, and I think an interpreter, doesn't matter what their heritage is, as long as they can speak the language, would be helpful. So maybe there's some gringos in the department who can speak Spanish as well. I'd like to find out what that number might be. Thank you.
And I have a few comments as well, Chief. I agree that I appreciate the approach of the strategic plan. I think this is the best one I've seen on my time at the board. So I congratulate you and thank you for being so open to hearing from your team and the community and the commissioners I really appreciate Commissioner Garcia's point, and I think to comment on Commissioner Clark's point, a lot of recruitment is when you see people that look like you want to work in that workplace. So there's some of that diversity that needs to happen in our ranks as well. As you know, Chief Moore, I'm a big proponent on the environmental sustainability piece, and I love that you have so many components in this. I would just ask, can you reach out to our new sustainability manager, Brian Biffont? I cannot pronounce. Befford, thank you. And tighten up the goals in the same way Commissioner Garcia was asking for the goals to be tightened a bit on reductions in carbon and what that would look like, just so we know how to get there instead of just we hope to reduce it. That would be great. And then I think Commissioner Andriola brought a great point about so many times we see these goals come back to us at our budget, but I think if there was a way that these specific goals could come back to the board every board meeting as a discussion item, and how we can move them forward in that appropriate way, obviously with staff giving updates, there's accountability held on both sides. I think that would be very appropriate, and certainly we should have a little bit of time to have those really good conversations as a board. So I appreciate Commissioner Andriola bringing that up. And then with the closest unit discussion, I think it may be a new day with that discussion because of GMT. It's not as much of a mutual aid you owe us because we responded. We already are getting paid. So I think we need to look at it in a different way and have those conversations and those discussions in a different way than we've ever had them before. And I think, that should also come back before the board. As Commissioner Clark said, it's really important to this community and the public safety of this community. So that would be a great discussion to have on how we look at that differently and talk to our partners about it differently as well.
I'm fully engaged with Chief Cochran and Chief White at City Sparks on this issue, and now is the time that we have to have those conversations as fire chiefs and staff, and even at the policy level of the board, because as we start to build the new CAD system, those discussions and policies have to be solidified before they start the program.
Exactly.
So if we wait 2 years, it's going to be too late.
Don't wait 2 years. I know we're waiting to implement that CAD, and it's so exciting that we're even moving forward with that as a region. I'm just thrilled. Everyone has adopted the agreement, REMSA, Reno, Sparks, and Washoe. But now is the time, like you said, to really look at those policy items as a board and then come together with the other boards and see where we're at. So thank you for your leadership on that. Any other board comments on this? I'm not seeing any. And Madam Clerk, it looks like we do have public comment on this item.
Cliff Lowe.
Hello again, Commissioners. For the record, Cliff Lowe. This will be on the topic. Just want to add some personal observations or comments and emphasize some things that were mentioned by the Chief and one of the Commissioners. But an individual thought on the issue of diversity and getting people in place. I think the important thing is not what people look like. As one Commissioner mentioned, it's that they're able to communicate. And one other thing that you might want to consider, just off the top of my head here, is technology. I believe there is technology available right now that is inexpensive and will give you real-time translation both ways. And that might be another way to go about solving the communication issue. I also wanted to mention something that I'm confident the Chief is well aware of, but in terms of the plan and the allocation of resources, it doesn't just take into consideration the call volume, the call count, but also how serious the needs might be and what the consequences might be for having delayed response times. And not just to have the first unit there, but in situations that call for more than one resource to be answering the type of call that comes into play. And I know the Chief is aware of that, and you probably are as well. I want to take a moment also to touch on the topic of annexation. I wish I had an answer. I don't know if any of you do, but it's a real challenge, and perhaps the chief was being diplomatic when he didn't mention what another commissioner alluded to, is that annexation not only affects the utilization of resources, but it also affects the revenues that come to Truckee Meadows Fire. So when the city annexes an area, they start to derive the property tax revenues, and if they have not made arrangements to provide the emergency services there, it can end up relying on Truckee Meadows Fire. It kind of adds insult to injury. And again, to mention that it's not just about money, to emphasize that when a Truckee Meadows unit is responding anywhere, but especially when it's responding into the city, those resources are not available to go into the Truckee Meadows primary service area. So I would ask you to place great importance on trying to address the annexation issue, and what the chief referred to as smart annexation. Thank you.
No one else has signed in?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, do you have enough direction, Chief, or do we need to make a motion?
I do. That was very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I thought it was a great discussion. I am looking to to Vice Chair Herman to see if you have a block vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Yes.
Item 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, and 17.
Thank you very much. Do commissioners have questions or comments or? Okay, with that, is that in the form of a motion, Vice Chair Herman?
Would be.
Okay, okay, thank you. Commissioner Andriola, second. And is there any public comment, Madam Clerk, on those items? Okay, with a motion and a second on the block, any questions on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none. That is approved. Wonderful. We are now moving on to item 18. Chief.
Item 18 is I can never read that blue background on the screen, so I have to go off the paper. Final Commissioners, Fire Chiefs announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda. No discussion among commissioners will take place on this item.
Thank you, Chief. And I'm looking to you. Do you have anything else?
Nothing additional, Madam Chair.
Okay. I'm looking to the Board of Fire Commissioners. Any comments or questions? Not seeing any. So we will now move to item 19, Chief.
Item 19 is final public comment.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Cliff Lowe?
Three times in an hour and a half or so. So I'm going to return to the topic of the original public comment, and I'm going to review a couple things regarding the Board of County Commissioners and the Rules of Procedure Handbook. And we'll again point out how that handbook provides for two sessions of public comment, one very early in the meeting and one later in the meeting, and it only allows for rearrangement. Those rules only allow for rearrangement, not deletion of items, certainly not on a regular basis. The ordinary order of business is the way this is talked about. And I think the explanations that have been given for allowing that are a stretch at best. Also, multiple commissioners in session and perhaps out of session, I'm not aware of, have asked for this topic to be on the agenda. To my knowledge, it has not been. And those same rules under meeting item requests, I'll read the whole thing. Nothing in this paragraph shall be construed to require the inclusion of an item on a meeting agenda if the chair makes a determination after consultation with legal counsel and the Washoe County manager that the item should not be placed on the agenda because it substantially conflicts with the law. Notice it says substantially conflicts with the law, or with the ability of the county to carry out its administrative operations and duties. I fail to see, and I think most any reasonable person would fail to see, how having this item on the agenda perhaps the first time, maybe the only time, as a discussion-only item, so there isn't public comment on this. I fail to see how that substantially conflicts with the law or the ability of the county to carry out its administrative operations and duties. And if there is something, again, I would call upon the county manager or whoever the responsible party is to make available to the public any and all records of such consultation that came to those conclusions. So this is about the rules that to me don't seem to be followed or getting followed. And yet there was an article in the, under different context, there was another article in the Reno Gazette Journal under Mark Robeson's byline. And it happened to do with the topic of keeping the chair in the current position. And the chair is quoted as saying, "But after looking into it more and talking with the DA's office, I realized the rules need to be changed." It goes on, "In order for the chair to be removed before the 2 years are up, the handbook would need to be changed first," Hill said. Hill said she wants to be responsive, but that rules are rules. And further, I'm charged with following the rules. I don't see how this commission can have it both ways. The commission deserves better, you all deserve better, and the public deserves consistency.
No one else has signed in.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Well, with what a great meeting, we are adjourned.